Hi, I'm Michaela, and I'm delighted to be in the home of Father Bill W. And today I'm excited to have this opportunity. Normally, Father Bill, you're the person that's sort of giving guidance and advice and running workshops about two-way prayer. And I'm delighted to have this opportunity today to ask you a little bit about two-way prayer and a little bit about yourself. You're normally sort of telling us all about the process, and
Yeah.
I'm delighted to have this opportunity.
Michaela is visiting the United States right now from Liverpool, and we've been in communication and thought it'd be a wonderful opportunity to just get together and do a little interview here. So I'm excited too.
Brilliant. So I've been practicing two-way prayer for 18 months. I got to it through the website, TwoWayPrayer.org, and it has been life-changing, absolutely life-changing. I have a background in philosophy. My first degree was in philosophy and literature. Then I studied psychology, and all through those studies, I'm always searching for what makes us tick, what helps us to learn about how to be our best selves, learn more about ourselves and understand ourselves a bit better. So I did those studies, then I got into psychology. I ended up being a business psychologist, helping people at work, but underlying all of that is this sort of quest, if you like, to understand how to get to know ourselves better. And I really needed that. 16 years ago, I started in a 12-step program, which was really life-changing as well. So I've read tons of books. I've studied philosophy, psychology, literature. And I have to say, hand on heart, if there's one person that provides practical advice and guidance in all aspects of this quest for going deeper, getting to know ourselves a bit better, I really believe it's you, Father Bill. And it is truly an honor to have the opportunity to ask you these questions today. So,
well, thank you. That's very sweet. I may do more of these if people are going to tell me those kinds of things.
It's all true. So I'm going to get going, and I'm going to ask you about where two-way prayer for you all started. So you really are a man on a mission, and I sense a deep purpose for you about two-way prayer. You've published original research on two-way prayer in peer-reviewed journals, and you've run numerous workshops, I know, here in your own country, but international ones as well. You've done some for the UK, bringing to life the spiritual principles and the practices of AA from the Oxford group roots, and bringing it up to the present day. And I know that hundreds of people, or probably thousands indeed, find this really helpful. I know you're a very humble person, but you've won awards for your contribution to advancing the understanding of faith and science in addiction and recovery. And your podcast series as well is really remarkable. It's very enlightening, enjoyable. You have a lovely way of making things that are deep and very philosophical and quite hard to sort of think about sometimes, but you lighten it up and you bring it alive, but not sacrificing the depth of it. So what's driving you?
I think what's driving me is when I started off in the field as a counselor. I trained as a counselor after I got sober. And I always felt that my duty in working with a person or working in a group therapy setting was to help people have a spiritual experience, an encounter with God, or with whatever. The word doesn't quite catch it anymore. The beyond that is within. That's one of the lovely phrases I picked up from my studies of the Oxford group, the beyond that is within. And if I had somebody for 30 days in a treatment setting, it was how to bring about that transformation.
Yeah.
So I was always kind of shooting for that.
Yeah.
How do you give people a taste so that they can experience the divine, the other, the more, the flow, know what it is, and then go out and find more of it. So that's always been kind of my driving force. And for myself as well, that was my experience, that I had a taste of it. And I'm coming up on 50 years sober, and being a member of Overeaters Anonymous, I always want more, more of that taste. Give me some more of that too. So it's been a mutual thing, helping people, but still helping myself in the process. So I always try to be learning, and going deeper, and discovering more, and it's made it exciting.
So you mentioned that 12-step experience, and I've read somewhere that you said that it was when you got into about 20 years of recovery that you were starting to look for something, you were responding to a need, perhaps to go deeper.
Yeah, very much so. And I find this is somewhat common with people who got some long-term recovery. That I worked my AA program. I was sincere about it, did my steps, but yet there, around 20 years, there was, is this all there is? I was kind of looking forward for the next 20 and saying, oh, it's getting kind of boring. You know what I mean? Mechanical. And that was when, through a series of events, I stumbled into the history, and studying the history, found this two-way prayer, as was part of originally what would have been our 11th step, that sought through prayer and meditation. And I started practicing it, and it really put new life into my program. There was an immediacy, there was an electricity, there was an experience that had been lacking. And that was 30 years ago. So I was hoping for 20, but I got an extra 30 out of it, and it's never ending. So I'm excited about that. And then through my two-way prayer, it's been quite clear to me over the years that what I'm being asked to do is to help people discover this practice. Because it's so simple. And Alcoholics and Addicts, we struggle to do prayer and meditation. And this is very simple, it's natural, it's intimate, and it's transformative.
Absolutely.
Can't ask for more than that.
Absolutely. I love the way you describe that, as you said, it was like electricity. I had a similar experience when I started. Everything felt more alive, and I felt that sort of connection. And I kind of knew, I didn't know what I know, but I didn't know what I knew, but I kind of knew that something very important and something very special was happening. And that journey, there was a journey beginning. So you describe two-way prayer as being rediscovered. You mentioned the Oxford group a minute ago. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I started reading Oxford group literature, and I would hear about a quiet time. So it was a period of time in the morning where they would spend roughly an hour. It was typically the recommendation. And they would read, and they would pray, and they would do all this. But then there was a slight reference to then the listening to God. And well, that's interesting. I'm okay talking to God, but I've never heard anything back, or rarely do. And they were pretty insistent that that was an important part of it. And they called it two-way prayer. And so it was bringing your problems to God, and then listening for the inner voice, and writing down the thoughts that come. And so it sounded strange. I did not tell my wife that that's what I'm doing here in the morning. but I began doing it, and I discovered a voice. I discovered an inner voice that was speaking to me. And it was different from my ego voice, my usual thought voice. I had heard it once before, Michaela. I had heard it actually when I first got sober. And I was studying to be a Jesuit priest at the time. And I was drinking and getting in all sorts of trouble. And it was all coming down, which was my pattern. And I was going to run either to Australia and stay drunk for the rest of my life, or I was going to go to India and join an ashram and get holier than hell. There's no middle road. And that's when I heard the voice, because it was the same voice that I heard later. And that voice said to me, Bill, you're 27. If those are your choices, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand it at the time, but what I now know it was the collapse of my ecosystem, the ecosystem that I had put together to meet the world and to be myself. It couldn't hold because it was false.
Right.
And so it broke. And, we have the expression, I'm cracking up. It's actually a good thing. Yes. Because then you get an opportunity to put the pieces together. And the pieces were going to be put together not by me, but by this inner voice that was speaking to me. And it wasn't until many, many years later that I really began to understand that's what Jung was getting at.
Yeah.
That there are two selves, at least, inside of us, and one is the ego, the small self, but there's a greater self. And it's that greater self that has business with me. And my life makes a difference whether I listen to it or I listen to my ego.
Yes.
And it kind of always comes back to that choice. And that's what the two-way prayer ultimately is about, I believe. It's people ask me, is this really God speaking to you? Yeah. Or isn't it just yourself? And my answer finally was, well, I don't know. If it's me, it's the best part of me I've ever found.
Yeah.
And it's the part of me that wants me to succeed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To become myself.
Yeah.
Become fully myself.
Yes. So you're talking about going really deep. You're giving us the tools to do that. We understand that we're making a choice. It's about sort of learning how to sit quietly every day, make it into a practice, and learning about what to listen for, and the fact that you need to be quiet. And I think we can, in a 12-step program, we can know that we need to do that. We can know intellectually it's going to be helpful, but it's so wonderful once you start to do this practice to sit down and actually experience it for yourself. And you've just sort of given us a taste of that. And it's very nourishing.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Why is it so important that it is nourishing and it's a depth that's being nourished?
Because it's who I am meant to be.
Right.
I am meant to be in relationship with something greater than myself.
Right.
I mean, that's the history of religion.
Yeah.
Of every religion is that readjustment of that relationship. Now, if you try to readjust that relationship on the basis of theology,
right,
you're going to wind up twisted like a pretzel, which is where I wound up.
Yeah.
And so when I started studying the Oxford group business, there was first called a First Century Christian Fellowship. Right. And there was something that just, they talk, used to talk in the Oxford group about luminative thoughts. Mm-hmm. And that was one of those luminative thoughts for me. It was like, put the theology down, put the philosophy down,
yeah,
and have the experience. And that was the way I began to approach it. And then I also began studying first century Christian scholars. I don't usually get to talk about this in my workshops, but that was as important to me as studying the Oxford group stuff. It was like I was reading literature from both groups. John Dominic Crossan probably the preeminent Jesus scholar in the world today.
Right.
He was one that his works really, really spoke to me, that in the first century, this is what they were experiencing. They were not experiencing Thomas Aquinas and the Summa Theologica, and all of those heavy things. They were experiencing love, and it was a transformative kind of love.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that had been missing in me. I mean, I really believe if you dig down into addiction, that it's a love disorder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you talk about the juice, you talk about the energy.
Yeah.
Is that love coming in? Is that love going out?
Yeah.
If it is, then you're peaceful. You are who you're meant to be.
Yes.
You know, now just increase the flow and find the obstacles to the flow. I visited an old man in Maryland, James Houck, who got sober the day after Bill Wilson. I went to his home. I wanted to learn more about two-way prayer, and I asked him about it. And I was looking for a gimmick, I think, you know. Well, give me some tricks of the trade, James. You've been doing this all your life. And he said to me something. He said, it's all about the absolutes.
Yeah.
It's all about the four absolutes. And what he meant by that is, I was a little disappointed at the time, but he was right. Am I living a life of honesty? Am I living a life of unselfishness? Am I living a life of love, you know, and a life of purity? Purity of mind, purity of heart, purity of the body, purity of the emotions. It's not just sexual purity, although it is that too. But those were the attributes of Jesus. And that was the underlying dynamic that really was what the Oxford Group was about, what Bill Wilson was brought into, what Dr. Bob was brought into. Dr. Bob said, you know, he practiced them till the day he died, but they got kind of pushed down in AA. We don't talk about them. Wilson was afraid it was going to scare alcoholics off, you know. I think it was a misunderstanding of what they were. And the other thing, Michaela, was the two-way prayer also got kind of pushed down. So those two things, when I started reading the history of early recovery, the pioneers, these were the practices they were doing. They were doing the two-way prayer, and it was based on living the four absolutes. So my guidance has been, get this out to the world.
And I'm so glad, and I'm sure other people are so glad that is your guidance. From my own experience of two-way prayer, I know that when I'm listening to the guidance, I know that it isn't the voice of my everyday rational mind that I'm listening to. Can you tell us a little bit more about what we are listening to when we are practicing two-way prayer?
I think you're listening to the divine. The divine that is within. All right. Which is, I mean, if you go looking for, I was looking for God all my life, you know, in all the wrong places. And the last place you'd ever think to look for God is inside your own life. And yet that's where it is. So what am I listening to? I'm listening to myself with a capital S. I'm listening to the part of me that shares in the divinity. All right. And God has a thing about us human beings. You know, it's like, I really believe that God needs us in order to experience himself or herself. That there's a mutuality there. So it's not just a one-way street. I mean, for 20 years, it was definitely a one-way street. But and this is where Jung was very helpful to me, studying his work. And now I'm getting into William James at a deeper level. And I see it there too. It's that if you really go to the depths of self, removing the little ego with its gaminess and such, you're going to find something very sacred in everybody. In everybody. And when you touch that, there's a heat to it. You know what I mean? It's so I'm out here and I'm cold and I'm lonely, but when I draw near to this, I'm getting close to the fire.
Yeah.
And it's warming me, and it's giving meaning and purpose to my life.
Yeah.
That's the stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I've experienced that. I used to have, when I was listening for, I used to call it, before I did two-way prayer, a sort of intuition.
Yes.
I used to be listening for that, and I'd notice in my belly a sort of maybe a knot in my stomach, and
Right.
I'd start to think, is that trying to tell me something?
Right.
And two-way prayer gives structure and form, and it's very real. It's very, very real. And I really.
This is what the book says. The great reality is within.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
you've touched the great reality.
Yes.
And the great reality has touched you.
Yes.
And that's the thing that is going to be more satisfying than alcohol or drugs or food or sex or whatever the addiction might be. And that's what they told, that's what they told me when I was leaving treatment. If you don't find something that feels better than what you were doing, you're going to go back to it.
Yeah.
So that's why I think this two-way prayer is important, because it's a way in, a simple way in.
Yeah.
The God within.
Yes. Yes, and at a sort of more practical level, my background has been in sort of stress management and helping people to feel less anxious, particularly in the workplace. But just the whole process of having a chair that you would sit in, or a place that that you're keeping it separate, and that's going to be the place where you do your two-way prayer. And doing it on a daily basis and getting into the habit of doing that, I know that just that ritual of sitting down in my chair,
right,
sort of having a meditation book that I might sort of read from, getting my book out and my pen, and sort of, I can just feel myself, even those physical cues before I've even started the process, just start to sort of calm me down, and I start to enter that sort of, and it feels like a sacred space before I've even got started.
Right.
And it feels like I've created something that's very nourishing, very nurturing, and very healthy.
Right. And if I'm not healthy, that becomes even more important.
Yes.
That there is the place, as you're describing, where sanity can come through.
Yeah.
I mean, I would call two-way prayer kind of a form of divine therapy.
Yes.
I mean, I worked with the poor for many, many years in treatment centers. And it was, these people couldn't afford a therapist.
Yeah.
Can you come up with a form of therapy that everybody can do, that doesn't cost anything, wherein you can access this? You go to see a therapist, what they say, well, tell me more. Tell me more. And you do, and you kind of pour it out. Well, God's kind of saying the same thing through this process. Tell me more. Tell me your problems. Tell me what's going on inside. And I'm doing it 30 years. I've never been judged, never been yelled at, which was not the home situation that I grew up in. I was yelled at and beaten and lots of, it wasn't safe. This is safe.
Yes.
It's safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was one of my needs, was to find that place of safety when I was searching. I really needed that. So just sort of to carry on from that a little bit, I want to read a quote that I like from Thomas Merton. He said, "Our real journey in life is interior. It is a matter of growth, deepening, and an ever greater surrender to the creative action of love and grace in our hearts. Never was it more necessary to respond to that action." So that hints at a sense of urgency in today's society for putting deeper goals and values ahead of what we might call resume virtues. So how does two-way prayer, how does it help us with these very specific demands that we might have from everyday life? Like, I'm worried about this. How am I going to cope with that? I know it does help with that, but can you just tell us what your take is on that?
Well, my two-way prayer, having had 20 years in AA by the time I got to it, has definitely taken on a 12-step flavor.
Right.
You know what I mean? which wasn't there, I guess, in the Oxford group days when other people were doing it.
Okay.
So I approach it in line with step 10,
Okay.
taking your inventory.
Right.
So I look inside, internally, what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, is there a disturbance in there?
Yeah.
Is there fear? Is there anxiety? What's happening internally? What's happening to me externally? You know, so I'm looking at my life from two camera angles there. You know, outside and inside. And where do I need help?
Yeah.
Where do I need help?
Yeah.
The help then, or I put that into question. Lord, I'm feeling blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Please help me. I've kind of done my 10th step, and then I get the guidance. And I think this is what because I've kind of found over the years is there's the deep dive,
Yeah.
which is going down and feeling God's presence, calming the fear.
Right.
You know, my favorite scripture is Adam in the garden after he's screwed up. Then I can relate to Adam, right?
Yeah.
And what's he doing? He's hiding in the bushes. And God comes along in the story, and this is just a story, please, you know, but God comes along in the story looking for him, you know, where are you? Where are you? And he sees some feet hanging out of the bushes there. He says, you know, well, I was ashamed, naked and ashamed. And God says something in the story, who told you you were naked?
Yeah.
And to me, that's a beautiful description of how the ego has taken charge and separated from the divine. And so the recovery process is all about bringing these two back into alignment.
Yeah.
You know, some trauma survivors have difficulty with the word surrender. It's terrifying to some. So I talked about the deep dive, which is kind of going there and sort of a spiritual chiropractic. You know, God's going to twist you, and oh, that feels good. Thank you, Jesus. You know, I needed that. You know, but then there's also very practical, and this is mentioned in the big book. You know, we look at the day ahead. And we ask where I can be useful. So what I often do, either in combination or if I'm really scattered, this is all that I do. Just look at the day ahead. Yeah. And intuitively, I look at my day, and okay, I'm going to meet with so and so. Now the guidance comes: call so and so, or do this, and I write those down in my book, and then I put a little box next to them, and sometimes. I will just hold my book in front of me, and okay, I'm working off of this list. It's not a to-do list.
No.
Very different.
Yeah.
It's a guidance list, you know? And so when I'm doing those things, I'm doing them under guidance. And I'm also, and this is probably extremely important for us addicts, I'm being obedient, which is kind of a new thing. I mean, we're anti-authority, you know, we're rebellious, but I'm being obedient. And damn, that's a nice feeling. You know? And if I go to at the end of the day and I look at my list and I've checked off everything, I've had a good day. And that anxiety is not there. Now, I have a day where I've done half. I've had days where I've done none of it. I watch that anxiety creeps back in. Takes over my life. I'm hiding in the bushes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I find that, you know, sometimes when I've had guidance that I haven't followed, it's not a one-time deal, because the guidance is very loving. And also there'll be another nudge. I'll get another nudge. So if I haven't done it that day, it will come in, you know, it's not a critical voice at all.
No, you don't get yelled at, do you?
You don't get yelled at.
No, daddy's not there.
Absolutely. And that for me was a whole new experience. And also, you know, that I had a very strong inner critic, and that's been so healing, is not to get yelled at and just to feel those,
right,
the nudges coming.
Right. Yeah. Are you ready now?
Yes.
Are you
absolutely.
ready now? How about today?
Yes. Absolutely.
Didn't do it yesterday. Didn't do it all month. How about today?
Yes.
But it's always pulling you towards.
Yeah.
So I call them promptings.
Yes.
You know, which I think is nudges. It's pushing you and pulling you.
Yeah.
It's going in both directions.
Yeah.
I mean, or coming from both directions.
Yeah.
You know, and if I can get into alignment,
yeah,
with that, and obedient to that, it's a different space.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
What's Star Wars? Is the Force with you? You feel it.
Yes, you do.
You do feel it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that, you know, even if I don't think I've ever had like a run of more than a couple of days where I haven't done two-way prayer. Not because I'm sort of forcing myself to do it, because I need it. Right. I know that I really need it. It's probably the first time that I've really stuck to anything apart from my sobriety. Right. But that I've really, really stuck with something in such a wholehearted way.
Well, isn't it really an extension of your sobriety?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
It's not like it's separate from.
No.
It's the missing part of.
Yes. Yes.
You know, and that's why I get excited about this thing.
Yeah.
That because I know people who I mean, I get emails all the time that this has brought new life. Yeah. Into my recovery.
Yes.
And so it's not, but it's not just people who got 20, 15 years sober that happens to. It's also people who struggled with the program. Yeah. You know, is this all you have to offer me? Yeah. No, it's everything that we have to offer you. You know what I mean? It's yeah. And if they can get in touch with this, boom, yeah. Then they can go on and on and on. Yeah, absolutely. There's no limit. No, absolutely. So I think what I was talking about there, like trying to explain as well, was my commitment to this process. That's what I'm proud of. I'm proud of the commitment, and it's brought so much out in my personality that I probably would have been too afraid to address or to look at. Yeah. Can you tell us about something that you mentioned, obedience? Is there anything else that you're really proud of? No, proud of, but what you triggered in me, what you were just saying there, was going outside your comfort zone.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
All right. I do not like doing podcasts. Yeah. I do not like doing workshops. Right. I mean, some people just get a big thrill of it. Oh, when do I get to do this again? Yeah. I want to go hide under a rock for 3 days. You know, gosh. It's like I've gone out there. So what has this experience done for me? It's taken me into areas which I would have avoided. I would have said, I can't do that. Yeah. I can't do that. Yeah. Well, the truth is I can't do that. but if it's the power working through me that's doing that, the power can do that. Yeah. And so you kind of go along with it. Mm. But in the going along with it, you become the self that you're meant to be. Yeah. You see? So. Yeah, that's a perfect description, and absolutely what I've experienced. Yeah, you take risks. Yes. You take some risks. Yeah. And I always thought I was a risk taker, but I was being rebellious, and it doesn't, right. It's not the same sort of wholehearted, wholesome approach because you're fighting against something. With two-way prayer, you're going along with something, you're meeting something and trying to be in alignment. Sam Shoemaker, who taught Wilson a lot of his spirituality, member of the Oxford group, wonderful expression that he used. He said it's a risk to bet everything on God. Mm. And it's a risk not to. Oh. You see, that's the thing. Yeah. Am I going to get into this two-way prayer business listen to the deepest part of me, safeguard it in terms of I check it. Is it honest? Is it pure? Is it unselfish? Is it loving? What Dr. Bob said, if it meets those tests, you can't be too far from the truth.
Yeah.
And there's just something about being in touch with the truth that is extremely important. Our politics notwithstanding today.
Yeah. Yes, that is so important. So I know that you've got a wonderful website, TwoWayPrayer.org. It's very interactive. It's got brilliant advice for people that want to start two-way prayer, or people that may have started it and doing it if they wanted a reminder, or there's tons of stuff. There's also your podcasts as well. So I think there's everything on there for people that wanted to, more practical help with getting
Right.
going, or getting going along. Is there anything you would say to someone that is perhaps thinking about it, a bit nervous, or what would you say to?
I'd say do it.
Yes.
It's like getting in the water.
Yeah.
You just have to take the leap.
Yeah.
And do it, and listen. And the other thing I would add is imagination.
Yeah.
It's not audio hallucinations.
Yeah.
It's freeing your imagination.
Yeah.
And this is something that I think we really need to study more of: imagination, intuition, inspiration.
Yeah.
Where do these things come from? They come from very deep within.
Yeah.
And it's very different from the analytical, cognitive, behavioral psychology stuff that the world is full of. Why? Because you can measure it. Two-way prayer is very difficult to measure. But we've, you mentioned in the beginning, we have done some fairly extensive studies, seeing that it is tremendously effective with people. And Alcoholics and Addicts, we have such a hard time doing meditation.
Yeah.
Quiet the mind.
Yeah.
Well, good luck. We got monkey mind. Jump in here. Well, you don't have to quiet your mind.
No.
You just have to redirect your mind.
Yeah.
And allow your imagination. If God were to speak, what would he or she or it say to you?
Yeah.
And then I always recommend, and this is not Oxford group, but I stumbled on it, and if it works, use it. A term of endearment. Start off when God is speaking to you with a term of endearment. My dear sweet daughter, my beloved child, my love of my life. The drippier you can get, the better. Because why? Because it's sending your mind to a place inside where love resides. And allowing it then to come to the surface, and then it just bubbles out. I mean, I do these workshops and give people an opportunity to share what they, we just do a 5-minute sample where teach them how to do it, and then they go inside, and then they come back, and it's unbelievable, the stuff that comes out, pouring out, and people are in tears oftentimes. Why? Because they've touched themselves. And it's a self with a capital S. And that's the best way I can put it. I mean, I never understood Jung when he was just self and then self with capital. Can't you come up with two different words? But the truth is, no, you can't. This is who you are. This is who you are. But you don't know who you are.
Being able to be sort of authentic is
right.
So important. And again, two-way prayers has really helped me with that, and that creative process as well. I know that one morning after two-way prayer, I spontaneously did something artistic with some paint. I did. I drew a mandala, and just thought, I'm going to draw one today.
Right.
And I've got that's now something that I've done many of them, and it's something that's really enriched my life, and it's helped me to express that creativity. And who knew?
Right.
I don't think I'd have come across that without two-way prayer. And it's such an important part of my life now, and part of me that I didn't know that I had. I always thought my great desire was to write, and I love writing, but actually it's probably my great desire is a little bit more playful. And through two-way prayer, I've sort of been able to get more in touch with the inner child.
Yeah.
And that has just been so amazing, absolutely amazing. So I can get out my pencils and my paints and draw a mandala, and I feel so connected, and it's so authentic. A lovely feeling that I can honestly say that I hadn't consciously, had maybe since I was a child,
Well, I think in part it's going back to being that child.
Yeah.
And allowing that child to express herself in ways that you had then pushed down. That's been my experience.
Yes.
Usually at the end of a workshop, I'll stay around for a Q&A. And after the numbers have gone down, we're kind of a small group left on the thing. And somebody might come up with that inner child piece. Because I've found that kind of work is maybe the next step.
Right.
After you've listened to God.
Yeah.
And found that relationship is safe.
Yeah.
It's almost like God then sends us in search of the parts of ourselves that have been left behind.
Right.
To bring them up.
Yes.
And so scripture said, unless you become like a little child, you ain't going to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I got to become like a little child, which means what? Which means innocence, which means purity, which means love. The things that did get pushed down, squelched, stomped on in many cases. Yeah. And now that child within gets to come up, to express itself through our lives. Yeah. Boy, you want to talk about energy. Yeah. It's the kid energy. Yeah. It's the kid who has the power. Yeah. It's in every one of us. Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of reaching up for the sky, figuratively, and then reaching down to the depths. Yeah. And not being afraid of the shadow either. Yeah. Not the negative parts, not to deny them. Yeah. But to see what's behind them. Yeah. What's behind them. Yeah. And they have gifts there. Yes. So it's a wide open door.
Yes, absolutely. That's a whole whole topic in itself, isn't it? The shadow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we best not go there.
Yeah. Yes.
Next time we'll do that.
Next time. So I mentioned commitment before, and I know it's obvious through your work over the last 30 years. I don't think your commitment to two-way prayer, I don't think that's a strong enough word. And sometimes the commitment continues, and it can be something that continues beyond our lifetime. So many stories of people that sort of will bring something to life or rediscover something, bring it to life, set something into motion, and it has its own momentum, and it becomes more than us. What are your hopes for the future of two-way prayer, Father Bill?
That we don't mess it up.
Right. Yeah.
That we don't mess it up. I think there's a reason it didn't make it into AA. I think this is a practice between you and God. Yeah. And right away, we want to bring it into meetings, and we want to share our two-way prayers with everybody. And it's understandable, but it's also dangerous. Right. I mean, the ego is phenomenal in its ability to manipulate and take over and sabotage. Yeah. And I think that's the great danger, that it will do that. Yeah. So I'm very cautious. I don't recommend starting two-way prayer meetings in 12-step fellowships. Right. I say, no, get a small group of people. If after you've been doing this for a while, then it's probably good to find a kindred soul and share with a prayer partner. And I did that for 10 years in the beginning with a fellow I knew, and it was tremendously meaningful. He would call me at 7 o'clock every Monday morning, and he would share his two-way prayer writings for the week. I would share mine, and we would listen to one another. We wouldn't try to fix one another, but we would listen to one another, and I would benefit from what I heard him exploring. He would benefit from what I was exploring. After you've done that for a while, it might be good to have several people come together and do it via a Zoom or do it a WhatsApp call. But it has to stay small, I believe, and has to stay intimate, because you're going to have to trust people.
Yes.
And you're not going to try to fix people. And I don't want to hear what your opinion of what God is saying to me.
Yeah.
That's my business. But I want to hear what God is saying to me through you. That's very different.
Yeah.
That's not threatening.
No.
So to be able to handle that, to do that right, it's not your typical 12-step meeting.
No.
And there is going to be some crosstalk. I think there needs to be, but not at cross purposes, And so it's tricky. Put some stuff on the website, and did a couple of podcasts on that. Yeah. Because I think it's important. So,
as always, very, very practical. That's what I really, really love about Two-Way Prayer and the website that you've put together. Really, really practical, and you can get started. And if you have a question, you can just look around the website and find that answer.
Yeah, if I can get everything onto the website, then I can go back under my rock. I'm done.
Well,
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm really, really glad that you've come out from under your rock. And I know the people that have attended your workshops as well have really, really benefited. So I'd just like to say thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Well, it's been fun to be on the other side too. So.
Yes. And
thanks, Michaela.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay. Hope some of this made sense to the folks out there. Thank you for listening. God bless. Keep coming back.